This court has heard 4 full days of evidence and arguments on a 12-count trial information filed by the state of Illinois against Karen Plambeck. The court heard testimony from both the state and the defense, reviewed hundreds of exhibits, hours of video, and is now prepared to render a verdict in this matter. In rendering this verdict, the court has considered the statute 510 ILCS 70/3.02A, subsection A. The text most pertinent to our purposes here today reads as follows: no person may intentionally commit an act that causes a companion animal to suffer serious injury or death. Having heard this evidence, the testimony, and having had an opportunity to gauge and weigh the credibility of the witnesses presenting testimony, the court has also disregarded certain information that it had gleaned from evidence that was presented in this court, as promised, because it was inadmissible, either due to a lack of relevance, prejudicial nature as it was presented. It was some of it was speculative or otherwise prohibited from being considered by me, and I have disregarded that information in coming to my decision. The court also asked the attorneys during closing arguments about their interpretation regarding the applicable law in this particular case. I asked pointed questions and considered those arguments. The court also considered the following cases interpreting the applicable law in this, including People v. Kirkpatrick, 2020, Illinois, Appellate 5th, 160422, 2020, which directed this court to apply its common sense. I always do, but it was very instructive. Second case that I found instructive was People v. Lee, 2015, Illinois, Appellate 1st, 132059, 2015 decision. Based upon the evidence, which was substantial, some would call somewhat overwhelming, the court finds that Karen Plambeck undertook a duty of care for nearly 200 dogs. But the court only considers the dogs identified in the trial information on the 12 counts that I was to consider, Ms. Plambeck. First dog, the one that was euthanized, the dead dog. Merle, Chunky, the ligature injury dog, the matted dog 167 with hot spots, Galveston, Beauty, Elena, Sweetie, Buddy, Poppy, and Sir Lancelot. By her own admission and the testimony of the witnesses involved in this case, Karen Plambeck was a breeder of collies for years. The court finds that these dogs were companion animals and meets the element within the statute. The court further finds that Karen Plambeck undertook the duty to care for these companion animals. No one foisted these dogs upon her. She sought them out or agreed to nurture and care for these animals, which was a conscious choice. Because of Karen Plambeck's choice, she was duty-bound to provide and care for these dogs. Testimony revealed that this was not the duty of others. It was hers alone, and despite evidence that others would help care for the dogs from time to time, at her specific request, she was the caretaker and she was responsible for these animals. In her care, these dogs have suffered to the point of causing death and serious injury. Just as Karen Plambeck had a duty to protect, nurture, and care for these companion animals, the court has a duty to hold her accountable for a conscious choice not to care for these animals. That choice was an overt act in consciously failing to provide care when a duty was owed. This court finds that a duty existed, an intentional act was committed in failing to fulfill a duty of care, and finds as follows. As to count 1, court finds Ms. Plambeck guilty. Count 2, guilty. Count 3, guilty. Count 4, not guilty. Count 5, guilty. Count 6, guilty. Count 7, guilty. Count 8, guilty. Count 9, guilty. Count 10, guilty. Count 11, guilty. Count 12, guilty. The evidence of guilt in this case is overwhelming. Court found that the state's witnesses were all credible and their testimony was corroborated by other witness testimony and by the entered exhibits or both. Defense witnesses at times expressed some bias or lack of knowledge as to the facts on the date of the alleged offenses. The court does find the testimony of Kurt Plambeck and Casey Plambeck credible. The court would like to thank all the witnesses in this case for your honesty, integrity, and testimony before this honorable court. This court, having rendered its verdict, will now order a pre-sentence investigation. That investigation will take place and this matter will be set for sentencing no later than 90 days from today's date, at which time, Ms. Plambeck, we will have a hearing in mitigation and aggravation, and I will hear arguments again as to what your punishment or accountability should be in this case. The state will argue the other side, the factors in aggravation. Any other outstanding cases that are associated or trailing along with this matter will be set for status at this time.